Hello there everyone, welcome to the channel if you're new, welcome back if you aren't. I'm EDJ, and we are going to be watching History Summarize the Byzantine Empire's Beginnings. So this is new, I haven't ever watched, or at least for this channel, never watched or reacted to something from Overly Sarcastic Productions. And these guys have been around for a long time. I remember being in like middle school, and their Iliad video dropped, and I remember watching that, loving it, trying to share it with all my friends, and none of them cared to watch it. But unfortunately, yeah, I remember that, and I watched a few of their videos. So they're a duo, I believe. So there's Red and Blue. I mainly watch a lot of Red's videos. I never really watched a lot of Blue solo. The only one that I can think of is I watched the Cleopatra video, which, overall gave me a much more positive impression and feeling of Cleopatra. So these guys are very informative, very fun to watch from the few videos I have seen. And yeah, overall, we covered Belisarius from Epic History TV and the Belisarius battle videos from History March, so I kind of want to look a little bit more into, the Byzantine Empire, since I've kind of neglected that. I could talk about, the wholly formed Rome up to the end of, the western portion of it, but from Byzantium onwards, the Eastern Roman Empire, I don't know much. The only emperor I knew and still kind of know is Justinian. So yeah, just to go show you how ignorant I am of this era, right? So I want to learn more and just have a better appreciation, and so hopefully that these next 4 videos will give me a much more deeper understanding and appreciation towards the Eastern Roman Empire. So yes, I don't really have much else to add. I just want to say that I always put the link to the original videos in the description. I always want to give credit where it is due. This is all Overly Sarcastic Productions. I'm just a guy who's into history, a history buff if you would, who wants to learn more. And, yeah, let's get to it. Let's learn, shall we? So yes, without any further ado, let's learn about the Byzantine Empire, the beginnings.
You ever lie awake at night thinking wistfully about the Roman Empire?
Oh boy, certainly. Like, all of my videos that I'm uploading now are all related to Rome, other than like Napoleon and Hannibal. Rome basically has a chokehold on my channel and my life, basically.
Or is that just a me thing? This is so sad. Okay. Alexa, play Roman Empire 2. Oh, hell yeah, this is my jam. You see, the big plot twist of the fall of Rome is that it didn't. While the West was off collapsing and turning into medieval Europe, the East carried on being the Roman Empire for another 1,000 years. First question, how? And 2, a millennium is a long time. What traits stuck to the classical roots and what innovations came in during the medieval period? To see how we got from point R to point B, let's do some history. This video is brought to you by nobody. I just kind of wanted to say hi and that I hope you're having a good day. Hope you enjoy my fun history video.
Thank you.
Our story begins in the early 300s AD, with a barely standing Roman Empire now split into 4 administrative regions in the
Oh boy, yeah, I remember Diocletian's Tetrarchy. I remember when we were looking at, like, By the way, I apologize if you keep hearing me cough. About 2 days ago, I kind of had that tickle in the back of the throat, you know what I mean? Like, I guess post-nasal drip is what it's called. And yesterday, just full of, phlegm or whatever it is was in my throat, like, threw up a few times. Other than that, I feel pretty fine. Like, I don't have, like, a flu or a cold. Like, it's just the throat. And today I'm feeling much better. Like, it's not there. That feeling isn't really present, though a little bit of you'll hear me cough or sound a little odd, but overall, at least good enough to make videos. But yeah, when we were covering, Dova Hadi's unbiased history series of Rome, and he got to Diocletian. I'm not gonna lie, I was like a little. I remember when we were watching that, I was like, boy, I can see a lot of potential for disaster the moment he introduced the Tetrarchy. And I was correct, because, like, yeah, like, I think the system was, it was supposed to, like, prevent, at least Diocletian was trying to prevent another crisis of the 3rd century, right, and end a lot of the eternal strife that Romans had among each other, just constantly betraying and killing each other. And this just opened up new ways for Romans to turn on each other. It's like, I was like, you guys can barely handle one Augustus. Having like 4 emperors is insane. I don't know. I won't lie. I like Diocletian. You know, I liked a lot of his reforms. I admired that he tried to do something new, but yeah, this was a really, well, I thought it was a bad system, but if it plays into the part of, you know, the Eastern Roman Empire lasting longer, then maybe in the long run it did something good? Huh. It's a funny way to think about it. I never thought. Well, let's see.
Hopes of easing the govern. Oh no, they're already fighting each other. Ugh, gross. Alright, look away, kids. This is messy. Flash forward 2 decades, Constantine reconquers everything, picks up Christianity along the way, and decides that the empire really needs a new capital. So he picked the ancient site of Byzantium at the northeast corner of the Aegean Sea, as it stood at the crossroads of the Black Sea and the Mediterranean, and was closer to the rich and well-urbanized provinces of the east, so it would be the perfect spot for a new imperial city. After 6 years of whirlwind and kind of shoddy construction, Constantine consecrated the city in 330 as the New Rome, much to the annoyance of the Romans back in, you know, the first Rome. But reunifying an empire and introducing an entirely new religion comes with some challenges, and Constantine soon found Christians fiercely debating the nuances of Trinitarian theology.
Oh boy, yeah, we can get into that, can we? For those of you who don't know, you know, I went to Bible college. At the moment you see this recording, I already have my bachelor's in theology, so, you know, we did study Constantine, we studied the Nicene Creed, we studied, you know, the councils, we basically went through. Constantine was the Roman emperor I think we covered in, like, class and learned about, and it's just so much, like, you know, Christianity, there's so many denominations, and some denominations are, you know, all over the place. There are different beliefs, and it goes back even to the time of the Apostle Paul, in like how early divisions some Christians had. Like, oh, I consider myself Paul's apostles, and, you know, it's interesting. Sometimes you'll even have completely whole denominations that are basically the same as others, except with like one minor difference, you know, and like the way they want to worship or express themselves. I'm not gonna get it all into that, because in this channel I don't like to talk about my faith, not because I'm ashamed or anything, but I keep that separate. If you want to hear me talk about theology, talk about religion, my main channel is called Edwin de Jesus, and, you know, it's linked on my main page of this channel. You can definitely watch it if you want to hear me talk about it. But it's just, yeah, there's just so much to talk about in regards to this and, you know, religion. And Constantine, basically, yeah, the first, like, Roman Christian emperor. And what makes him unique is that you could say that he made Christianity mainstream, I suppose you could put it like that. You know, it's really him that kind of helped, you know, the Christians, because before, you know, you've heard of the Christian persecutions from the Romans from, like, earliest time, the time of Nero. So yeah, overall it's interesting that what was once like a really looked down upon faith became the faith for Rome, you know, and a lot of part of the world, you know.
Academic discussion about church doctrine is all well and good until the Alexandrians started rioting about it, so Constantine exerted some imperial authority to keep Christianity under control. Instead of the tried and true method of lions, he held the church-wide Council of Nicaea for bishops to negotiate a universal and legally binding orthodoxy of the empire. Now,
you know, I think in one of the councils, like, I could be wrong, but there was a saint called Saint Nicholas. you know, who he kind of patterned Santa Claus after, and I think he legit attacked someone. I'm sorry, I keep coughing. But yeah, there's like a famous, basically like account or story that he punched, I think, a man named Arius. Though I'm not sure if that's completely how it went down. I'm not sure that's even accurate. You know, that's a funny story of Santa Claus punching someone else in the face over religious disputes, right? And yeah, like I mentioned earlier, the divisions of Christianity, you know, you could see in the Bible, like the earliest church, if you want to ever read it. I don't know, maybe just for curiosity, I don't know. But yeah, I think the council was mainly just to kind of get everyone on the same board. All right, here's the unified, you know, full Christianity, you know, we can all agree on, we can all stop kind of having issues with one another, just like, you know, to lay it down, like, here it is, you know. And I think Constantine kind of just, you know, kind of oversaw the whole thing, and, yeah.
Now, this being the Romans we're talking about, pretty much nothing can stop these people from finding a single excuse to throttle each other, but broadly speaking, the Council of Nicaea did the trick and established a consistent theological and political framework for Roman Christianity. These two changes marked the start of the East's geographical and religious divergence from the Old Empire, but things really accelerated in the century after. We've talked about this before, so I'll breeze through most of it, but after Constantine's three sons got into a civil war with each other, no surprise there, the world's most tragic introvert Julian got dragged kicking and screaming into being the Roman emperor, whereupon he spent 2 years trying and failing to reconvert the empire to paganism before being speared to death while on a poorly organized campaign in Persia. Then a series of unremarkable emperors took turns doing absolutely nothing to solve the serious problems the empire still faced after Constantine, such as wars, weak administration.
Yeah, government's too weak, army is not much better, imperial succession is settled by civil war. Boy, Rome just does love fighting each other. Not as much as the Greeks, but man, do they like eventually, especially the crisis of the 3rd century, that was insane, the amount of usurpers and people who were just killing each other for power. Literally, a general would win one battle and be like, I guess I'm emperor of Rome now. Like, what? One battle, right? It's insane.
And a wimpier army than Rome was used to having. Sure, Constantine pulled the hard carry to give the empire another century of life, but things were still looking mighty grim. In comes Theodosius, an emperor who had the wildcard idea to permanently bisect the empire into an independent eastern and western half. So it's here in 395 that the Byzantine Empire officially gets going, but that's technically a misnomer, as nobody called the Eastern Empire Byzantine until the 1500s. As far as every single one of its inhabitants was concerned, they were Romaioi.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? It's like, they're Rome. They're still Rome, you know? But I think I could be wrong, but I was watching a video, I think of a day or two ago, about like, I think it was predominantly around the Renaissance era, that, you know, some people wanted to reconnect with ancient, you know, civilization, and, you know, some of the people who weren't Romans were kind of reconnecting with Rome, but it's funny because at the same time, the Byzantines were around, you know, like they still existed, so Rome was still there, they never lost touch, they just keep existing. So to kind of distinguish between this new Rome and old Rome, I think Byzantine was around. I don't think that's how it went. I'm not sure. That was just a random, forgot, was it a video I was watching or like something I was reading online? I don't know. I still share stuff like this with you guys, just what I'm reading or learning, even if it may not be completely right, because I just Google something and I just pick the first thing I see and I start reading it. And, you know, either way, yeah, something like that.
Just as Roman as their forebears like Caesar and Constantine and the rest. But back to the Western imperial collapse at hand, this split effectively doomed the West, though it put the East in a position to stay strong, productive, and cohesive for centuries. So if Theodosius implicitly sentenced Western Rome to death, then his successors plunged the knives by responding to the perilous threat of Gauls by just paying them to go west instead.
Oh dear. Wait, let me get that again. Wait, I'm so sorry, guys. I just want to really get this.
Effectively doomed the West, though it put the East in The Western imperial collapse at hand, this split effectively doomed the West, though it put the East in a position to stay strong, productive, and cohesive for centuries. So if Theodosius implicitly sentenced Western Rome to death, then his successors plunged the knives by responding to the perilous threat of Gauls by just paying them to go west instead. How noble. Meanwhile, the Western Emperor...
Oh wow, I never... They paid them? Huh. I did not know that, wow. It's interesting. I don't know, what do you guys think? You think something could have... Do you think it would have been better had the split never happened, like between East and West? Or do you think it would have fallen if it all just remained one unified thing? Or do you think the West would have just fallen anyways? And even if Rome was under one emperor or something? Oh, that's interesting. That's got me thinking now.
Emperors were too feckless to stop very simple problems from boiling over into Rome getting sacked. Twice. But the Byzantine defense strategy was more than just making everything Italy's problem. At the turn of the 5th century, Constantinople outgrew its first fortifications and began building the Theodosian Walls, a massive set of 3-tiered ramparts that defended the city for the next 1,000 years. But even the strongest walls couldn't save the Byzantine Empire from its greatest danger yet. Sports. See, the Byzantines loved
the Nika riots, right? Or the Nika riots, I remember when we were covering, like, the Belisarius Justinian era, that, the blues and the greens, I believe, it was all sports. I think, like, sometimes, man, we take sports seriously nowadays, but man, I think they took it more back then. Are you kidding me? But, I'm just joking, but actually maybe not. But point is, I think that's what he's getting to. If not, I know that was a huge source of conflict on its own.
Their chariot races. They were fanatics about it, and they aligned themselves with either the blue or the green team. Ah yes, I see no way in which this rabid tribalism could possibly ever go wrong. But this, unsurprisingly, rapidly spun out of control as the blues and the greens began butting heads on politics and religion and then started throwing hands about it in the middle of church. It's like a big medieval Kingsman fight up in there. But by far the worst riots broke out during the reign of the Emperor Justinian. For context, he and his father Justin came from humble beginnings and rose through the military ranks to rule the empire in one of history's rare few reverse regencies, where the younger Justinian was the power behind his father's throne. While he wasn't pulling the imperial strings, Justinian was falling in love with the famed actress Theodora, and they together would become the ultimate power couple of the 6th century. So back to the riots, Emperor Justinian tried to curb the influence of the blues and greens in politics and succeeded only in irritating both of them so badly that they teamed up in an open revolt. These wily sports fans shouted victory chants and poured out of the Chariot Stadium to light Constantinople on fire for 5 straight days. Justinian was ready to hop on a ship and bail the hell out of there, but Empress Theodora told him to face his fate with honor and live or die as an emperor. And that is part of why she is the biggest badass this side of Cleopatra. I really wish I had more time to talk about Theodora, but suffice to say that she is absolutely worth reading up about. The Nika riots ultimately fell to the blade during a bloody massacre in the stadium, and Justinian was left to pick up the charred pieces of his ruined city. So he immediately set about rebuilding Constantinople even shinier than before, and that meant a new centerpiece church, the Hagia Sophia. In an evolution from your standard Roman temples, this one's got a dome. In a doubly brilliant move, the dome is ringed with windows, which cast an ever-changing light onto the gold mosaics, and the halo effect makes the dome look like it's damn near floating. When Justinian...
Oh man, yeah, Justinian I think was recorded saying, "Solomon, I have outdone you." And this is just beautiful. I was like looking at images after we were watching the Epic History TV, videos, and I was just looking at it. I was like trying to find on YouTube the Hagia Sophia during the time of Justinian, like when it was brand new at its prime, right? And yeah, I was looking at some of the inside images on Google, and it's just such a beautiful church. It really was. I think he set out to create the most beautiful church of all time, and I think he certainly succeeded in that, or at least you could definitely argue it's one of,
Entered the completed church for the first time, he's said to have muttered, "Solomon, I have surpassed thee." We're extremely lucky to still have this masterpiece of a church around today, albeit in a different form, and you can see the influence of its design all throughout the Eastern Mediterranean and well beyond the empire's lifetime. Good dome. Meanwhile, Justinian was also hard at work codifying hundreds of years of Roman laws into one standardized book. The Corpus Juris Civilis remains the basis of most European law codes to this day. Justinian liked big ideas: one law, one church, and one empire. But this last one was a bit of a sticking point because the Roman Empire had been missing its Rome for over 50 years. So Justinian put Belisarius in charge of retaking the West. And retake he did because Belisarius is a freaking boss. For his
Heck yeah, he is. I'm glad we watched the Belisarius videos before this, but man, I'm still upset he got screwed over, you know? He basically took Rome. They lost it while he was busy being disgraced. And then he came back and he only had like 4,000 dudes. And then he could have probably succeeded in retaking it. But, you know, obviously the numbers game. And then some guy named Narcissus or like takes all of Rome back while Belisarius doesn't. I was so upset. I was like, poor Belisarius. He got screwed over a lot. He's my homie though. Poor Belisarius. I felt so bad for him.
His first act, he reclaimed Carthage and the North African coast from the Vandals of all people, with minimal casualties in just under a year. To celebrate his spectacular victory, Justinian awarded Belisarius with a triumph, an honor no general had received since Caesar. With this amazing foothold in the West, Belisarius launched his conquest of Italy. This would prove trickier, but with careful progression up the peninsula and inventive tactics like storming Naples by aqueduct, Belisarius pushed all the way to Rome and made Hannibal look like a chump. As history will have you know, marching on Rome is a right reserved only to Roman generals. Thank you very much. The Ostrogoths put up a fierce counterattack and surrounded the city of Rome for nearly a year, but Belisarius held out and continued up to Milan and the political capital of Ravenna. But the problem with investing manpower into the West is that the East lay severely exposed, and when the
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Justinian had this huge ambition to reunify Rome, and I admire, you know, his that ambition of his. But the thing is, with the armies they were fielding, they weren't particularly large, at least from what we were watching from like the Belisarius videos. Like, you know, compared to the Rome of old, right, which could just casually field like 60, 80, 30,000 people, like the numbers were lacking. And I was thinking like, like, to reunify all of Rome, you're gonna need a lot of manpower to keep it, and it just didn't seem like the Byzantine Empire had that, and that he was stretching himself out, especially once, like, the bubonic plague comes in, and all that disaster. I'm like, yeah, like, you couldn't really do that, huh? And those gains made by Belisarius kind of, like, you know, obviously were lost, at least in, like, the Italian peninsula, was lost pretty quickly. And, you know, I've heard some people say that, I don't know if I believe this, but, you know, that, like, maybe Justinian's ambitious militaristic undertakings kind of didn't help the Byzantines in the long run. I don't know about that, because I don't really know much about the Byzantines after Justinian. But that was something like I think I remember reading or skimming through, so I don't know, that was interesting.
Persian King Khosrow heard word that the Byzantines were distracted, he invaded Mesopotamia. So now Justinian found himself split between two very distant fronts, with the Ostrogoths still carving out pockets of resistance over in Italy. All of this was made far worse by the sudden guest appearance of, surprise, the Black Death, which ravaged the Byzantines and the Persians alike. The empire would have surely collapsed if not for the Herculean efforts of Theodora, who kept it all in one piece while Justinian was busy recovering from a plague coma. In the middle of all of this, Ostrogoths sacked and destroyed Rome, leaving the city a complete ghost town and forcing Belisarius to reconquer Italy from the boot to the Alps. This being Belisarius, of course he did, cause he's the coolest dude, but it took a really long time and what was left of Italy was, pretty busted up. The one bright spot amid all this mess is the city of Ravenna, which soon became home to some splendid and miraculously preserved feats of Byzantine art and architecture. As early as the 500s, Byzantines had already gotten their golden aesthetic and talent for mosaics to near perfection. Over the course of his 4 decades in power, Justinian rebuilt Constantinople, codified the laws, standardized the church hierarchy, survived a plague, and reconquered the West, or at least what was left of it. For better and worse, Justinian's reign was a massive step in the evolution of the Byzantine Empire, and for all his efforts efforts to reclaim Rome, Justinian's lasting legacy proved that the empire no longer really needed it. And it's just as well, because 3 very short years after Justinian died, the Lombards came across the Alps, and by the end of the century they had swiped 2/3 of Italy. Oops. Meanwhile, back in Constantinople, things were going somewhere between and oof. Emperor Maurice was deposed by the army in favor of the completely incompetent Phocas, so the Persians used this as a perfect excuse for war and pushed all the way into Anatolia before diverting south to capture the Levant and Egypt. This was really bad, and probably would have been a total game over if not for the miraculous arrival of Heraclius, the son of North Africa's governor. He showed up, booted Phocas right on out of there, and assumed control of the empire. By combining civil and military authority, his government was flexible and better able to repel the Persian threat. After a long and hard-fought campaign that nearly bankrupted the empire, Heraclius pushed into the heart of Sassanid Persia and brokered a peace of, wait for it, status quo antebellum. After 7 centuries of Romano-Persian wars going back to the Republic and the Parthians in 53 BC, both empires now stood battered to within an inch of their life, ending with the exact same borders that they started with. Yeesh. But the longer-term consequences of this would become all too clear all too soon, as the newfound—
Yeah, I remember when we were watching the Dovahadi series of the Byzantines, that I was like, oh, this guy, you know, kind of reminds me of, sorry, I have a problem pronouncing his name, Heraclius. Point is, you know, this guy, you know, I was like, he kind of reminds me of Gallienus, you know, just putting against the odds, and someone, like, I don't know, was like, well, no, actually, you see, and like, went on this long tangent about how, like, that it wasn't good or something. I forgot. It's been a while, but point is that it didn't help the Byzantines in the long run. At least this entire conflict. I don't know. You can go back to that video and see the comment. But yeah, doesn't eventually, like, Islam rises, right? Because I know it was like Mehmed II, the Conqueror, who eventually, like, delivers the death blow, because, like, at least in the East, you had the Ottoman Turks, or would become, like, one of the biggest powers of all time, that even go on to threaten, like, you know, Europe. So yeah.
Muslim Caliphate began expanding out of Arabia, and neither Persia nor the Byzantines had the means to stop them. In 8 short years, the Rashidun Caliphate conquered the entire Levant, and within another 10 they had Egypt and Persia as well. Constantinople itself nearly fell to an Arab siege, but they held out thanks to a neat little trick called, basically, napalm.
Isn't it called Greek fire or something? I know the big thing about it is that people are like, it's lost to time, we don't know how to make it, or something like that. Yeah, Greek fire.
By the end of the century, the Byzantine Empire found itself firmly shut out of the entire southern Mediterranean for good. Meanwhile, the other front wasn't looking that much better. What other front, you ask? Well, you see, Slavic forces had pushed down into the Peloponnese, splitting Greece in half and leaving the empire looking like a checkerboard. Surprise! It's at least refreshing to see that the time-honored Roman tradition of spectacular territorial implosion is still alive and well. So there's that. It's perhaps no coincidence that this chapter in Byzantine history is considered the beginning of the Dark Ages, but we've still got over 700 years left on the clock. Amid all that land getting yoinked, it's easy to miss what else has changed, and easy to forget what continuity is still there. The empire in 300 was pagan, bilingual in Greek and Latin, and spread out over the whole Mediterranean. The empire now maintained the same core laws and form of government that Augustus had first established, but territorially and culturally, the empire was becoming far more Greek. Its borders much more closely reflected the classical Greek world.
Yeah, you know, that was funny, because I was kind of like, I remember when I was like Googling randomly and going on random forums, like, hey, how did like, you know, the Europe view the Byzantines? How they Christian Europe? And that I think some people posted some excerpts, and like they would call the Byzantines the kingdom of the Greeks, or the kingdom of Greece or something, that they would refer to them as Greek instead of Roman. At least some like letters and like communication. So I found that really interesting. Like, yeah, and I believe the main language was Greek. So, you know, I mean, they're Roman, but yeah, I don't know, that it's just a very interesting little thing I remembered.
Greek had become the official language, and the empire's strongest literary legacy at this point was its preservation of ancient scholarship. Some 2/3 of all the ancient Greek texts we have today come to us from the Byzantines. Forget the Library of Alexandria. In the long run, it's the Library of Constantinople that really did the hard carry. On the other hand, all of this Greekness lets historians take potshots saying that the Byzantine Empire isn't really the authentic Roman Empire, but we'll see how the Byzantines maintain that fundamentally Roman capacity to adapt and evolve to survive in changing circumstances. Both literally and figuratively, the Byzantine Golden Age was just over the horizon. My god, like, so much gold mosaic, it's honestly kind of insane. But oh man, is it pretty.
Yeah, when I think of like the full Rome, like, you know, before the western portion fell, like the aesthetic that comes to my mind is marble. When I think of like the Byzantine Empire, like the thing that comes into my mind is like purple and gold. You know, like I think they just have such a like great aesthetic. Their art, their architecture, like in terms of just aesthetic, I like the Eastern Roman Empire than when it was fully unified Rome, you know? Like it just had a really like beautiful look to it. I don't know how else to put it. Just the aesthetic was top notch, you know?
Pretty. Thank you so much for watching. I've been wanting to do this video.
So yeah, that's it, and that was great, you know, really informative. I really loved it, just watching, and I'm gonna be looking at more. They have like 4 Byzantine videos, so I'm gonna be watching, you know, so stick around for that for sure. And yeah, guys, overall, I'll be seeing you all next time. Bye, everyone.